You gonna talk about the O-ring versus no O-ring? We get asked that a lot.
Yeah, so I don't never use an O-ring ever.
I don't either.
And strictly because I don't want to take the time to, get that O-ring all the way down there and then slide the hook through it. I don't want to do it. I just put the hook through there. I mean, that whole pack of worms right there costs $2.
And this is to me, this is a very, very, very finesse presentation. This, in my opinion, is the most finesse presentation that I have in my arsenal, is this right here. So I do not want to add anything visually or weighting wise. There's so little weight involved in this that even a plastic O-ring is going to add enough weight to affect the action of this bait, because there's no weight to any of this. So anything's going to change it, and it's going to make it it's going to make it not act the way I want it to. It's going to make it be less natural looking and less natural acting in the water. And like Z said, if you rig it right and you cast it right, you're not really going to throw them off. We don't ever throw them off. And the O-ring is just kind of superfluous. You don't need
the only time I throw them off now is when I've caught 4 or 5 fish on them and the hole's wallered out. But that brings me to my next point. Another reason why I hook it about 4 or 5 ribs past the little fat sack, egg sack, whatever it is.
I always call it egg sack.
When I do catch 2 or 3 fish, 4 fish, whatever, I can see my holes wallering out. I don't have to change worms. I can just pull it out, move it up about 1/4 of an inch, brand new, keep on fishing. The only time I'll actually change a worm is, you guys have seen it, when it's cut in half and it's just barely hanging there by that one little strip of plastic. But if you start back in the middle of the worm, after every 2 or 3 fish, just move your hook up 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, whatever you feel comfortable with, and keep slinging it. That's how come I hardly ever have to buy these packs of worms, because I'm using. I bet you, unless the fish has bit it and it swallowed it and pulled it off the hook, I can catch 10 fish with 1 worm just from simply moving my hook and manipulating it like that. So the 3, again, as I said, the zoom trick worm is my go-to. But this time of year, as B-Law said, I've had a lot better success with a stick bait, kind of like the Smash Tech, Smash Stick, Cinco. I think Cincos are way too soft to wacky worm. I'll never throw a wacky worm.
Yeah. Yum Dinger's a good one to wacky.
Yum Dinger's a really good one. And same principle. I just lost my hook. There it is. Same principle. I just try to hook it in the middle of the worm. Now, notice there's a difference here. Now, the reason why I prefer these is because when I hold it like this, that worm almost folds in half. But when I hold a stick bait, as you can see, there's not a lot of bend in there until I actually pop it. Then it'll go ahead and, squeeze down, squeeze down, squeeze down. So that's something else to pay attention to. And again, that's why 90% of the time I'm throwing these unless the fish tells me I want to. I don't go to the stick bait, the fatter, thicker, heavier stick bait. I don't go to this to catch bigger fish. I go to this if I'm not getting bites on this, then I'll switch to a stick bait and maybe I'll start getting bites.
It's a totally different presentation, right? Because you got one, it's going to fall nose down. It's going to stand up for a little bit, give it a little wiggle, and it's going to ease over. You got one that's falling horizontally, because we're not putting nail weight in the Cinco most of the time. I know you don't, right?
Right.
I don't. And so it falls horizontally. It has a little wiggle as it falls. And I think they bite every day. They'll bite one or the other better. They're going to bite one better than the other. And I think that some days it's going to be the trick worm and some days it's going to be the stick bait.
So another thing about the stick bait, it's a lot easier to skip up under docks with a stick bait than it is the trick worm.
I want to show you one thing that you were talking about while we're talking about stick baits, and you're talking about how easily they fold in half versus they don't. There's a stick bait that folds in half now.
Yeah, that is the 6 cents clout.
Yeah, that's the new stick bait from 6 cents that I have. I mean, that bait's caught more fish lately for me than everything else combined.
And this was going to be my number 3 bait, but since we're already there, now you guys know. So, all right. Anyway, Billy, I misspoke a minute ago. Billy says he don't put the nail weight in the Cincos. I still do. I put a nail weight in every wacky worm that I throw. Simply because the only reason because I want that bait to fall head first, and I want it to hit the bottom for a second and just sit there before it lays over. I always use a a half a nail weight no matter what kind of worm I'm throwing. Now, again, easier to skip. I will switch to this also if it's a very windy day and I'm having trouble casting that trick worm. I'll go to the stick worm. Sometimes that hurts me because the wind's blowing and they want a trick worm. Well, that just means you got to work this a little bit slower, a little bit more, you know, tactful as far as where you're putting that bait. Now, going back to throwing a worm in wacky worm in deeper water and using the whole nail weight, one of the things I like to do is, this is about the only time I will try to throw the wacky worm as far as I can, get it out there as far as I can. The reason why, because if you're throwing a big shaky head like big perm, or if you're throwing a Carolina rig, if you throw that bait 60, 70, 100 feet out there, when it hits, it's pretty much because of the weight, it's going to fall pretty vertical. Okay, it's going to swim back to you a little bit. Wacky worm's not going to do that. I don't care if you throw it out there and strip your line off like this, it's still going to swim back to you.
Just the drag from the line.
That's right. It's still going to swim back to you, so you're going to lose a lot of that area that you're wanting to work. So I'll throw it out there and I'll immediately click my reel, because like I said, it really does no good to strip it off unless you're getting some loose line like I seem to do a lot of time. And as that bait's falling, I'll cast it a few times and in my head I'll count down 1,001, 1,002. You know, it'll take 12, 15, sometimes 25 seconds to get to the bottom depending on how deep I'm fishing. I will look on my graph and where am I seeing most of the fish? Are they suspended a foot or two off the bottom, or are they 5 foot off the bottom? Well, I'll throw it out there in deep water, let's say 20 foot, and the fish are at 18 foot. I'll throw it out there as soon as it hits the water. I'll count down to 18 or 19, and I'll just give it one big pop like that. So as it's falling, all right, getting its way to the bottom, I'll hit it one time, I try to get it where the fish are holding, pop it that one time, and then let it swim back to. A lot of times when I do that and let it go, I try to let it go to the bottom. When I engage my reel and raise my line up to you know, start working it, then my line's already swimming or it's already pulling back on me. So I want to make sure I mention that when you are fishing deep water. Shallow water, I don't do that. If I'm fishing 2 to 8 foot, I just cast it out next to the bush or the stump and I just let it fall. When I pick it up, line's over here, or sometimes they're pulling back, or sometimes there's nothing, and you start working it. Now the way I work a wacky worm is,
grab that one, that's a short one.
the way I work a wacky worm is, again, I'll throw it out there. If it's in deep water, I'll give it one pop, you know, when it's in the target area. But if I'm fishing shallow water, which I do throw a wacky worm 99% of the time, less than 12 foot of water, I'll throw it out there. And keep in mind now, even if you're in shallow water, this bait is swimming back to the boat. So you in the orange shirt, if you're the stump I'm targeting, I'm gonna throw 6 feet past you and click my reel. So when it falls, I'm hoping it's gonna land either on the back side of that stump or right at that stump. Okay, I'll let it sit there for about a 2 count, and then I usually give it 2 pops like this, pop, pop, and then I pop it up, and then I immediately drop my rod tip, okay? Because I want it to pop up, then I want it to have full slack for coming back down.
Stand by that door right there. I'm gonna make sure this camera's got you.
Yeah.
Okay, I want everybody to pay real close attention, because this is the biggest difference that I see in what he does and what everybody else does. The sharpness and the speed in which he does that little, it's just a real subtle quick snap and not a pull. It sounds familiar to some of the stuff we've talked about with frogs, where we talk about popping the slack and not pulling the frog. Yeah. Show them how you do it, Zeke.
Yep, so I'll cast out there next to a stump or beyond the stump actually, and when I'm ready to pop that bait or work it, and again we're talking about shallow water fishing here, then I just give it 1, 2, just boom, boom, real fast, real erratic, pop, pop. Because you know, a lot of times these bites are going to be reaction bites.
Now when you are popping it, when you begin the pop, is it on a tight line or is there slack that you're popping?
No, I will, here.
You got him on the twist again. Hey, I got him twice tonight. I've had a good night, y'all.
All right, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll
here, hold this, Vic.
I'll throw it out there, okay, and I'll drop my rod tip. I'll let it fall. I'll engage my reel, and I will I won't reel a line super tight, but I'll reel it. If you guys, I know you guys on the camera can't see this, but if you guys can see this, I'm gonna reel it up to about that much slack, just barely any slack, and then I'm just gonna pop just like that. And you hold it again, Billy. If you're especially if you're in grass, you can actually hear your line.
Make that
just like that. Just 1, 2, 1, 2. Now I'll change it up. I'll give it 1, 1, 2, and then I'll 1, and then sometimes I'll 1, 2, 3. The only time I really 3 pop it is if I'm fishing grass and the grass is taller than 2 or 3 foot underneath the water.
So
okay?
One thing I want everybody to take note of. Okay, pull that line, pull it tight. See, like not tight, but like taut as if you're feeling for a fish. Okay, like you're feeling for weight on a fish. If you notice when he starts that pop, this line is not tight. That's important because A, we talked about how sharp and subtle and quick his twitches are, and then B, they're slacking that line, so that worm is doing its dead rest, dead still thing on the bottom, just dead stick, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, there's no easing into it or nothing like that. It's real sharp. Now I want you to think about that and try to compute that in your head as far as from a fish's perspective. So Mr. Fish is sitting here and the worm's sitting there like this, because this ain't a wacky rig, but if it was, the nail weight falls down, the fish sees it falling, he comes up and looks at it. If it starts to ease off and then takes off, that's a totally different thing for a fish to react to than if he comes over here and it falls and he's curious and just as he gets up to look at it, it just suddenly goes pop, pop up in his face. If you've ever bed fished or you've ever watched fish eat, you know they react to those type of motions. That dead still to all of a sudden quick, just it's like a cat with a red light. If that red light's sitting still on the floor, that cat's gonna stare at it. And if that red light eases off, that cat's just gonna keep staring at it. But if that red light goes, that cat freaks out. It's the same thing.
How long between each presentation?
That just depends. If I'm not getting a lot of bites, I may dead stick it a little bit longer, 8-10 seconds. Most of the time, I pop it. As soon as it hits the bottom, and I can see that I have that slack in my line, I'll give it about a 3 count, then I'll pop it again.
Yeah. And for me, activity level. So if the bait fish are active, if you know, well, he said like if you're getting more bites, then you don't wait as long too. But like if you feel like the fish are active, like here in a couple more weeks, if we get a cold front and you kind of know the fish are running around, and you've gone through there and you've caught a few on a trap or a spinnerbait or whatever you're throwing, and you want to try and clean them up with a wacky worm, that's not going to be the time to really wait a long time. Yeah. Like whatever the activity level is, you kind of want to set your pace to that.
Okay, now another very, very important thing to know and remember when you're fishing a wacky worm, I'm gonna say 95% of the time you will never feel the bite. You just ain't gonna feel it. You're gonna pop it, reel the slack out of line to where you're just about ready to work it again, and you'll feel, you know, fish has already got it by then. He's had it probably 3 or 4 seconds by then. You'll either feel him pulling and running, or you'll see your line going this way or this way. All right, so pay attention to your line when it's in the water. A lot of times, if you throw it out there and you are letting it sink to the bottom, you have that bow in your line. As it's falling, you can see your line barely tick, tick like that. You'll never feel it, but you'll just see your line just a little jump. Well, he just sucked it in right there. Yeah.
Now, I'm glad you said that you'll never feel it, because usually you don't. But with that rod right there, even on slack line, you feel it.
I'm gonna tell you when I have felt thump thump on a wacky worm, just like I'm fishing a Texas rig or a jig. You know, you feel that thump. When I feel that on a wacky worm, I'm deeper than 12 foot. I've got a lot of line in the water. For whatever reason, that's when I feel the fish bite the bait, is when I'm fishing deep water. If I'm fishing shallow water, like I said, I hardly ever feel them, that initial.
Yeah. When I got that Century Series, I noticed that right away on my lighter baits. And if you're fishing a weightless Texas rig, stick bait, or fluke or whatever, it's the same thing. You don't feel a lot of the bites. But that Century Series, and I know this is, you know, Mr. Pro Staff plug, but I mean, it's the truth. Like, I literally have noticed bites when I'm not even looking at the bait and I'm just letting it sink, and I'm looking over here talking to my customer or whatever I'm doing, and I'm just letting the bait fall on slack, waiting for it to get to the bottom, and all of a sudden I feel tick, and I look over and my line's slack, and I'm like, huh? And then I ease up on it and he's moving. I'm like, whoa. Like, that's something that I never felt before until I got that series of rods. And they're high dollar. And they're expensive. but that is the lightest, most sensitive rod I've ever felt in my life. So I'll stop. I won't plug. Oh yeah, and you can get a 10% discount if you're punching that code. Your Lakeport guide at 6centsfishing.com. I'm done pro staffing for the night.
All right, let's just do a quick gear review. All right.
One thing I tell everybody about what you were talking about is to, check that line. I know you're saying to watch it, but also physically. And you may have already said this, but when you shake it and you pop it up, when it's going back down, you drop your line, you let it fall on slack line because that's important, and you watch it. Even if you don't see a tick, before you just shake it on slack again, because I've made this mistake a lot, and I'll do it when I don't focus. When I quit paying attention, I still make this mistake. But I'll shake that wacky worm, and I'm watching my line, I don't see nothing, and I just kind of reel up some slack and I shake it, and it's tight. And I'm like, oh, and he spits it out, and I messed it. I shook him off like it's practice day or something. So check that line before you shake. So shake it, let your slack down, ease up, feel no weight. Now drop it and shake it again.
I will always reel my line tight before I pop it again. Now the way I get slack in my line is that I'll reel it up tight, and then if I don't feel a fish, I just simply drop my rod tip, pop, and then I let it fall, reel it back up again, drop, pop, and that's how I do it. Now, just a quick gear review. I'm throwing a 7 to 7.6, either or, whatever I feel comfortable with, or whatever you feel comfortable with. Medium action rod. Possibly medium heavy, depending on the brand of the rod. I just use a simple 6.3 to 6.3:1 gear ratio reel. You don't need a high speed reel or anything like that. Now, this is my line of choice, the Seeger and Vizex. The reason being is because this is supposed to be more invisible under the water than, say, the Red Label or the Abrazex, or
He told me to use Red Label when I fished with him, though.
Yeah. That's right. I tell him to use mono. But no, the reason why I use the 100% fluorocarbon line is because it's so dense, it sinks, and I want that as vertical as possible. Now, you're never going to get actual vertical fall on the presentation, but with this you'll get a lot more vertical than, say, with monofilament. Okay, or even a polycoat, copolymer, a fluorocoated line, but 100% fluorocarbon. I'm either throwing 12 or 15 depending on where I'm going. Like if I'm going to Holbrook, a place that really doesn't have a whole lot of structure, I can get away with 12-pound line, and you can still catch plenty big fish.
And I throw 12-pound line on mine out here even then.
Well, if I'm fishing Fork, Toledo, somewhere I'm gonna be flipping up in stumps, bushes, whatever, I'm throwing 15-pound line. And again, I try to
I'm probably having to throw 12 because I'm throwing that old stiff Red Label you told me to throw.
Yeah, I know it, man. That's all right. Here, I got this for you.
Set me up for failure.
But that's the line I'm throwing right there, the Seeger and Vizex, 15-pound, 100% fluorocarbon. What have I missed? The hook? Oh yeah. Oh, just as far as a gear review, yep. I'm throwing the Gamakatsu. I forget every time. The number one finesse wide gap weedless. That right there.
It's a mouthful.
Yep. You can pass that around. And again, I throw the number one over the 1/0 because it seems to stay pinned up.
With this crowd, did you get a head count on them hooks to that package?
Yeah, there's
whatever it is, there's one less now. Roy done had it.
Yeah,
I got
does anybody have any questions about wacky worm fishing, Roy?
Let me ask you this. On your wacky worm, that trick worm, I saw you hook it right behind the sack. About 3 ribs.
About 3 to 4 ribs behind the
you
sack.
hooked it this way. And the way Billy was saying, you get skin, that way you won't lose, you have more.
That's just something I've done with customers.
I do that the same. But I've seen another guy hook it a long way.
Oh, you talking about like
goes through the worm twice.
Like that right there?
Yes.
Basically?
Yes.
All right, I'd have to ask him
Will
why.
that work?
Yeah,
I mean, it still works, but
yeah, I'm sure it'll work, but again,
the worm and the reason I don't do it, I've seen that too, and I think that those guys are doing that on a small, like straight shank hook, and they're doing that to get it weedless. Well, that's because I personally believe that's because they haven't ever used this hook and seen how weedless this hook is with, mind you, with a soft weed guard that doesn't affect you on hookup ratio. Because most of your wacky worm hooks that are truly weedless have a stiff weed guard in front of your hook. Well, that's an issue when you're dealing with a little bitty hook and a big mouth, and you're trying to set the hook on a little bitty hook. That stiff weed guard can cause you to skin hook them and then they come off, or miss them altogether. It's a problem, but this hook is the deal. This hook has a weed guard that is very efficient and very snag-free and all cover, and yet is pliable enough to not be an issue on a hook set. Those guys that are doing that, I think they're using a little 1/0 or 2/0 straight shank hook, and they're coming in through the worm like this and then putting the round bend hook point back in the worm to make it weedless. And I think that's why they're doing it. I've talked to one guy that does it, and that's what he told me. But the thing that I don't like about that is, with this hook, we're talking about the action of the worm when you pull it. Well, we've got one point, and that worm can compress completely in half when we move it, when we shake it. That worm can compress completely in half. With this deal, that worm can only do this. Because he's got the hook in two places.
You do it, but I've seen people hook it the other way.
It affects the action in, to me, a negative way because it can't fold over as much.
Now, if there is one negative thing about these little gamakatsu hooks, is after 8-10 fish, this weed guard, it may slide down here to the bottom, it may be facing the wrong way, but to trump a negative with a positive is all you got to do is slide it back up and twist it around, and you can keep using it.
You do have to manipulate that weed guard. Yeah.
This is more, I think this is a plastic or some kind of fiberglass or something, because I mean, most of the hooks you see out there, like the V&Ms or whatever, they have metal guards.
Like
and man, if they bend on you, then you're gonna sit there 10 minutes trying to bend it and get it back right with a pair of pliers. This is always gonna be right, even if it's bent down and it's all the way down here. All you got to do is just use your fingernail and just slide it all the way back up and twist it around, and you can keep using it.
Yep. Any more questions about wacky worm?
Back when the big worm first came out, you said you were going to try one of them with Wacky.
Yeah. I never did do it because I'm a big dummy. Here's the thing about fishing every day. You
want to do a lot of stuff, but you just you do what.
Let me rephrase it. Here's the thing about fishing every day with pressure to produce. It's hard sometimes to one trick. You stole a whole bag of stick bait from me, but I can't have one trick one.
I stole a 35-gallon sack of those smashed
sticks. I literally gave him like big freezer bags of them, but I can't have a trick worm. No, it can be hard sometimes to. And I've found this over the last several years since I've been guiding. There's a lot of things that I want to do. And before I was guiding, I was very much a tinkerer. I don't know how to say that. But I was always doing something to a bait. I was big on putting those little willow leaf blades on the back of a worm at one time and just slow rolling that through grass. And there's a lot of different things that I used to do that I don't do anymore. And I don't ever explore new things as much as I want to. Because every day I go out, I got to produce fish. Whether it's on camera for video or whether it's for my customers in the boat, I've always got to catch them, and I have very little time to explore. I personally think that big perm with a nail weight in the head and a bigger Gamakatsu, like maybe a 2/0 Gamakatsu EWG, the same hook, finesse why I got weedless.
Now that I would actually go up on the size of a Lunker City nail weight.
I wouldn't. I just put a full one in for shallow water.
Oh yeah.
I just put a full one in for shallow water, but maybe have to do a big one. I don't know. It would be new. We'd have to explore it because big perm does have a lot of flotation to it. This Magnum Cross Smash Tech. It has no salt. That worm will literally float if you have no weight on it whatsoever, and so it's going to stand up, and it's going to create a big profile. And in the springtime, when we get them big fish up spawning, I think that would be a real good deal because in the springtime out here, the wacky worm, as Zach has presented it tonight, is an unbelievably effective tool for big fish. Well, if we upsize that profile for those big aggressive, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't make any difference, but it just seems like a good idea. But no, I never got to crack at it this year, and I want to, I just never got around to it. But for me, the wacky worm has been, there's times when I go solely fishing the wacky worm, but the wacky worm has been just a tremendous clean them out bait. For me, getter. I use, got to cover a lot of water, find new fish every day to some degree doing what I do every day. But when I find fish, the wacky worm is just a bait that I have just all the confidence in the world that I possibly could, and that if there's a fish in there that's willing to bite something, he'll bite that. And so even if he won't bite the chatterbait and he won't bite the crankbait and he won't bite the frog or whatever it is, I can pick that wacky worm up, and if there's a fish in there that's going to bite, he's going to bite that. So I can take areas that I'm fishing with guide customers, and milking an area is a big deal when you're fishing it. You want to get as much as you can out of this area today, so maybe you can have one more area tomorrow that you haven't hit today, right? Like managing your fish when you fish 300 days a year is the biggest challenge that I face. And so this bait helps me in a big way do that, because I can take an area that maybe we catch 3 fish in on a chatterbait, and all of a sudden we just caught 13. You know, and it happens like that, where that wacky worm will clean them out for me. So I'm a big fan of it.
Well, just don't get discouraged. You're not going to go out there. If you've never fished a wacky worm, or if you very seldomly fish a wacky worm, you ain't going to go out there tomorrow and be an expert at it. I mean, it took me 20 years to learn how to master the wacky worm, and I think I've done that, but it's only because I didn't put it down, you know. I was lucky enough to go out on Toledo Bend with Mr. Charlie the first time, my first trip ever to Toledo Bend, and I said, Charlie, what are you throwing? Because I just had Texas rig tied on. That's what you throw on Toledo Bend. And he goes, oh, it's a wacky worm, son. And I'm like, all right, well, put me one on. First time I threw it, it went like from here to young man right here, it went, I went, how you throw this thing? He goes, well, first of all, back way off on your reel and don't whip it, just kind of, you know, sweep it out there. So I did that, and I caught fish, and I said, well, this is a fish catching bait, and I just kept throwing it, and kept catching, and kept catching.
Yes, sir.
I got a question. I fish a wacky worm on both 2 different lines. You don't use open spin cast reel. I got one on open spin cast reel, but I got 20-pound braid on it with about a 7 or 8 foot leader on it. And does that braid hurt it or no?
Nah, not with that long of a leader, but you just got to remember, in that setup, your line is only as strong as that leader, that knot. I mean, that's too many moving parts for me.
Knot between it to tie them together.
So, and that's fine. You can get the line to hold up. The one thing I would tell you that it can affect you on the wacky worm, something Zach talked about earlier, the braid floats. So that's going to be that much more resistance to that worm as it falls.
Right.
So it's going to swing back to you even more so than if you were throwing it on straight fluorocarbon. Straight fluorocarbon would have more of a vertical fall. That would be the only difference it would really make in the action. But as far as it holding up and whatever, if you tie a good lead or not, you got your gear, your spinning rod set up right with the right direction, that's not going to be an issue. Most people throw a wacky worm on a spinning rod. We're the contradiction.
Yeah, I always throw it on a spinner rod or a drop shot on a spinner rod.
You know, and it's more of a trust issue with me. These East Texas lakes have big bass. They have big bass.
Right. And big
California has big bass. Florida has huge bass. I don't trust that light spinning gear. And it's a personal issue.
When you look at 10
pounder, it's right here.
When you look at 10 pounder in this much water, and it's full of stumps and coontail and hydrilla and potato weed and pondweed, you need to get control of that thing, or you're gonna lose him. So that's an important deal. But I really like that you brought up Charlie tonight. I'm glad that we brought him up, and it just, all I can think of every time I say Charlie. Now Charlie is as good a person as anybody would ever want to meet, but Charlie don't really pull no punches, does he, Z?
No, not at all. He will front end your butt in a second.
Charlie has a grandson who, his son-in-law, Matt, is a good buddy of ours, fishes with us, and they're from Louisiana, so fishes with it every once in a while. We don't get to see him very often, but his son, Alex, is getting into fishing. He's in high school. High school now?
Yeah, I think he's a freshman.
Freshman high school. He's a young guy. He's getting into fishing, and Charlie ain't gonna let up on no fish to let Alex learn or catch anything. Like, he's gonna catch them. So Alex has been getting kind of frustrated, right? Well, Matt brought Alex over here to see me this year, and this was
his birthday present. Trip with old B-Law.
Maybe the coolest moment, one of, if not the coolest moment of the whole year, because I know Matt personally. I care about Matt. He's a good friend. I like Matt a lot, think a lot of him and his whole family. But it just so worked out that day that Alex got, and Charlie was here.
Charlie was here. Me and him were in the boat together.
You were fishing with Charlie today.
That's right.
So him and Charlie are fishing.
Going over his head like this. Come on, Charlie, let me get this.
Yeah, let me get a cast.
Come on, man.
So him and Charlie are out fishing, and I'm taking Alex and Alex's dad, Matt, Charlie's son-in-law. And Alex, lo and behold, early in that day, catches a 7-pounder. New personal best. Bigger than anything Grandpa Charlie has caught on this trip.
That's right.
Right? So you know the text messages were going off, right?
Pictures, text messages.
A few hours later, Alex catches a 9-pounder. So he got the. We got to give old Charlie the ribbon and the needle that day, and it was one of the best moments of the whole year. Man.
Well, I got another reason to rib Charlie. I was fishing in his boat that morning, and Matt, Alex, and Billy was fishing in their boat. You know, they were on a trip. Me and Charlie were just fun fishing, and Charlie had this brand new graph he was so proud of, the Garmin Live Scope.
I remember this.
All right,
so great.
So, man, we're fishing all morning, and we pull up to a stump. And
that live scope looks out in front of you now.
That's right. So let's say the camera, the red bucket is a stump we're fishing, and we're back here. Well, he'll swing that thing around, and we won't see no stump. But Charlie will kind of say, "Oh, did you see it? Did you see it?" I'm like, "No, Charlie, I don't see it." And then we'll get right past that stump, and you'll see that stump is clean as day with fish all around it and everything. He had his transducer mounted backwards.
Yeah.
So he was looking everywhere we were fishing.
Tried to convince you that it was right.
It was showing back behind it. I said, Charlie, watch this. So I took his trolling motor and I flipped it all the way around like we were going to back up. I said, zzz. I said, there's that stump right there. And he went, well, I declare.
I know Charlie, he did not say I declare.
No, he didn't say that. But for the camera and the kids, that's what he said.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, man.
Well, hey, thanks, Billy, for letting me come talk about the Wacky Worm. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thanks for the questions. Really appreciate it.
Is there any questions about current patterns, anything that you guys want to know about fishing Lake Fork right now? Any questions, thoughts, concerns, anything? I want to make sure I don't leave any questions unturned. Okay. Well, we've gone a long time tonight. Y'all let me know. We good, or y'all want to talk about what's going on right now and how I'm catching them right now?
That's probably what they came for. I was just...
Okay, let's talk about what we're doing right now. So...
Billy knows where I came.
Yeah, you came because Zach's here. What they call it?
He called me.
What they call it? A bromance. That's a bromance going on right over here.
He called me.
Yeah. Zach texted him and said, "Hey, boo, I'm gonna be up here at the seminar."
I'm just trying to get a hookup on some painting work I need at the house.
Oh, okay.
And Roy owns a painting company.
Okay. So we kind of alluded to this earlier. A week ago and for a couple weeks before that, the fish were kind of grouped up. It was like some of the fish in the backs of creeks, residential fish, the bait moved back there. A lot of the smaller bait moved back there, and they were really grouped up on that bait. And you could catch them. Even some of the fish on the secondary points and the staging areas, the stop signs, were grouped up, and you could get in there. And when you found them, you could anchor down, fish real thorough, and catch them pretty good. We were catching big fish, catching big numbers of fish. I've said it before. I got to work on my list of friends, folks.
My part's over. I can screw around now.
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to try.
I keep interrupting you.
It's true. So the weather doesn't seem like it, but the water temps have actually dropped a little bit in the last week. I saw water as low as 81 this morning when I started. That's pretty low.
Is that because the light nights are getting longer, a little bit cooler?
You know what? You literally right now, like if y'all, there's light bulbs in my head. Bing, 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 bing. That's exactly what it is. I really was kind of confused this week, all week going, how is this water cooling off? The nights are getting longer. Mm-hmm. That's the first time I've ever accused you of being smart, but that was smart. That was very smart, Z. So yeah, now I'm chasing a squirrel, but that's what it is. Either way, it's cooling off. Well, what that has done is the water temps have cooled. It has taken those fish that were grouped up in staging areas or residential fish that were grouped up in the backs of creeks, and it's made everything kind of spread out. It's made some bait reposition and move within the creek. It's made the fish that were on the staging points start kind of moving further back, and it's scattered them, which makes things more difficult, as we talked about. And I had another light bulb moment earlier this week when I was fishing an area, and I said, okay, these fish aren't here, let's move. And we kicked the trolling motor on high, went into KVD mode, and then I figured out nowhere that I catch a whole bunch of fish in one spot. It was one or two here, two or three there, one here, as you went back through the creek. So they're real spread out. So it's important to be real efficient when you're covering that water. And really for us, the best bait, now I'm catching some fish on a shallow diving crankbait, the Movement 80X. The bigger fish that I'm catching, which that's a relative statement this week, I have not been catching a lot of big fish this week by any means. But the bigger fish that we are catching are coming on that Movement 80X. The lipless crankbait is really coming into play because I can fish that bait real fast over a lot of grass. The 1/4 ounce, the little small profile one.
Shad color?
Gold chrome.
Gold.
Something about gold chrome on this pond here. When they're on shad, you know, when it's not that red deal, when it's not that pre-spawn red deal, something about gold chrome on this lake works really, really well. But really the best bait, the most consistent bait, and the one that is the easiest to fish through any cover that you want to, is a little bitty 3-inch, 3.5-inch swim bait, weedless swim bait, and I'm throwing that little underspin on there, the owner flashy swimmer hook, because that little willow blade looks exactly like a lot of these little bait fish that they're chasing after. And I think with that little swim bait ahead of it and that little blade underneath it, it just looks like a little isolated pod of those little bait that they're chasing, and that's why they're hammering down on it the way they are.
That should get more prevalent as throughout the fall, doesn't it?
Well,
the swim bait bite.
It'll get more prevalent in that's remind me of that in a minute because I want to go into that. But right now what we're doing is we're rigging up the 3/0 owner flashy swimmer, and I'm using the Smash Tail Junior, and I'm using the baby poacher. Who remembers the poacher from the spring? We talked a lot about the regular full-size poacher, big fat bodied, kind of a short bait, but a fat big profile swim bait. Really did some damage on that this spring. Ronnie did a lot of damage on it at Falcon before we even got to spring. Like, it's a great bait. Well, Smash Tech makes a baby poacher, and it's right downstairs if you need some. And it's about 3.5 inches long. There you go. But that and the Smash Tail Junior. Now, when they're really kind of firing and chasing that bait, and you can see them chasing that bait, it seems like that baby poacher works better. But when it's a little more calm, less windy, maybe the bait fish aren't getting chased as much, that's when that Smash Tail Junior works better from what I'm seeing. And I think it's because that Smash Tail Junior has a real tight, subtle kick, and that baby poacher has a faster, harder kick to it. And it has a little fatter profile with some more wiggle in the body. But those two baits, we're just rigging that up on a 7.5 medium heavy rod. We're rigging it up on 20-pound fluorocarbon. We're making as long a cast as we can, point the rod right at it, and we just start reeling. And you can reel it fast, and they'll come get it. I mean, when they're firing, so you can cover a lot of water and reel it real fast. So we're going through there, and what we're doing is I'm putting my trolling motor on high. I'm getting back into the back third or quarter of these major creek arms. I'm talking about getting way back in the backs of them, like go way up Little Canyon, go way past the bridge in Little Mustang, way past the bridge in Little Mustang, all the way back there. Way past, past the bridge in Williams, that type of stuff. And just like in Williams is a perfect example because the bridge is like a perfect cutoff line. Like you can go past that bridge in Williams and just put your trolling motor on a pretty good speed and go doing this, right? And as soon as you get bit, drop your power poles if you got them, or just stop. And now fan cast that swim bait all the way around there. If you get another bite or two, good. If you don't, pick up that wacky worm, fan cast it around there, and then keep moving. And that's how I'm doing it. And that's how I'm making sure wherever there's a little pot of fish, I catch every one that'll bite, and I'm covered as much water as I can. Guys, we covered, everybody familiar with Glade? We literally covered probably 33% of the shoreline in Glade in a couple hours, like in 3 or 4 hours this morning. We just went, and like we caught quite a few fish, but we had to cover all that water to do it.
How many stumps you hit?
Huh? All of them. I hit all of the stumps. So that's happening right now. Now, what Zach was alluding to, a lot of things are going to come into play. Here over the next few weeks, especially if we get a good cold front, things change faster over the next month or month and a half, month, 2 months, whatever. Between now and the middle of November, things will change faster than they do any other time of year when it comes to the patterns and the variety of baits that'll work. Here in a month we'll be having seminars and I'll go throw the tackle box because it all works. Like that is that kind of thing that will happen in the fall. So with the swim bait in particular, right now there's a lot of little bitty bait back there. And there's a few pods, isolated pods of bigger bait, and we're catching bigger fish around those. But the further we get into this, the more big bait will really gather. I think there's some already back there that's not really gathered yet, but the more that big bait source will gather into magnum big mega schools of bait. And when that happens, the swim bait bite gets better, but you need to throw bigger. So as we go here pretty soon, I'm going to start throwing the hollow bodies. And then after that, I'm going to start throwing the poacher and the Smash Tech Convict and the big baits. You know about them, don't you? All them big swim baits. You just came here from California. I know you know about them big swim baits. That's where this deal was invented. But yeah, when you start seeing, you'll see it. Like you can. The beautiful part about fall, the shallow water fishing in the fall is very, very, very visual. You can actually see the bait. They'll swim right by your boat where you can literally see them. But when you start noticing those shad the size of your hand in big numbers swimming in front of your boat, you got to dig out that big swim bait. Because if you don't, you're missing one of the most special deals that happens out here. So that's coming. Yep. What else is going on now? That's how I'm doing it right now. I'm just
It's glide bait fishing or anything.
that's when you start seeing those. That's when that glide bait comes into play. And yes, I think if we don't get a lot of rain, if the lake doesn't get back full, like right now we're approaching 2 foot low. We're over 1.5 foot low. We're approaching 2 foot low. And what I can tell you is the last time the lake was 2 or 3 foot low in the fall, and we had some scattered grass like we do now. We don't have a lot of matted grass. We have quite a bit of scattered grass though, in some shallow water. And the last time we had that situation, as we got on into November, and that grass starts kind of easing up on the growth rate and dying back and kind of tapering down a little bit, you get this gap in the grass and the surface. The glide bait deal was just, I've never seen anything like it before.
Insane.
Since. I've never seen anything like it before since. I could literally, there was little feeding windows and I kind of got my timing down on them, and I could call my shot. I could pull you into a pocket. I could tell you, throw that glide bait up on that flat right there, keep it above the grass, slow roll it, about 6 cranks on your reel, and then twitch it twice. When you twitch it twice, make sure you got a good grip on your rod, because it's going to be a 6 to 7 pounder or bigger. And every time you would, it was just automatic. You saw it. Like, you'd pull in there, you'd throw the glide bait, you go. And it was just,
I'm gonna pull you out of the boat if you ain't ready.
I mean, we literally sometimes would catch them 2 at a time on the same glide bait. Like, you'd hook up one and another one try to steal it from you and get hooked up. I was noticing that this week. The lake level that we're at, if we don't get a significant rain and bring the lake back up, and the grass set up the way the grass is set up, when that water gets down towards 70 degrees, that glide bait deal, if it sets up like it is now, is going to go down. I think it is. I think it is. And I can assure you that guide trip, filming day or not, I will be exploring for that bite, because that's too special to miss out on if you can find it. Yep, so that's how we're doing it now. It's simple fishing, but it's hard fishing. You got to be real fast, real efficient, and at the same time be real thorough. Because as soon as you get a bite, you need to be real thorough. You got to capitalize on every bite.